My name is Vadim Smakhtin. I'm an engineer. I'm working with creative code, creative applications for like last 11 or 12 years, for a really long time. I'm also working as an educator and a person who launches different products. So I mean, I have many disciplines which I kind of combine in myself, and what I usually teach people is how to understand technology in more, let's say, artistic or maybe more, how I say, humane way. So because for myself, technology is like not code, not engineering, not like networks, laptops, etc. For myself, technology is what changes the society, what changes the way how we live, how we process and create information and various kind of things from that information. So this is what I usually teach people, how to think about like a technology in this way. I'm working again in a different companies through my life. Right now I'm working as a CTO of Habidatum. It's a urban data startup which focuses on big data analytics for urban environments. I also working as a partner in an architectural bureau called Ephemera. It's like a new type of architectural studios which focuses entirely on virtual environment. So we do not produce any kind of physical things. We produce only for what we call a metaverse. Soon, I think such architectural firms will pop up like mushrooms, but right now it's kind of exotic, maybe. I also teach in several universities. Right now, I'm finishing the workshop in UCL, as the University of Central London, because again with Maria Kuptsova. She's my close friend, and you will meet her in an hour. I'm also doing a PhD in University of Innsbruck, again on the theme of like a metaverse and how the metaverse landscape can be created and analyzed, and what and who will kind of populate this new landscape. With myself today, we will learn the basics of coding because I think it's essential. And our art and science program, which we are starting soon, will contain basically a first model, which will be entirely for creative coding, for you to be familiar with creative coding languages, etc. But today we will kind of shortly grasp the basics. I don't know if you know, because I mean, I didn't say it because I thought it's obvious, but now I'm understanding that maybe I need to again say that the art and science program next year, starting from September, will contain 3 different curators. Myself, I'm curating the digital art. Maria Kuptsova, she's curating technological art. And Laura Rodriguez, she's curating a bioart. And in the digital art, we will be focusing on a new spatial. So basically, we will search how the metaverse, how the virtual space is attached to a physical one. It should be somewhere on our website already, but if you never seen, so this is like a specialization that I create in art and science program. So for today's workshop, I wanted to kind of start with an introduction lecture about what it's all about, because I mean, this workshop is kind of unique and experimental because we are blending 3 different disciplines here. So first you will learn how to code with myself and how to produce digital patterns. Then with Maria, you will kind of convert the digital patterns into physical structures. And then with Laura, you will use these physical structures as boundaries for a biological agent, like a slime mold. So why we are doing so? I mean, what is this craze about? I think that I have a short lecture about it. It's called A Space for the Many. And it's a lecture about basically why we need to start to think about like biological things and technological things coexisting together inside of the virtual and metaverse environments. So usually I'm starting with this like a short question, all my lectures. This question is super simple. It's like what is a spatial form of Zoom meeting, right? Right now we are not in a Zoom. fortunately for myself, because I spent like last month entirely in Zoom, 12 hours per day, not 20, fortunately, but and I mean, if you start think, so how Zoom can be seen as an object, right? What is it like when you're sitting in this video call? How do you, I mean, feel yourself, and how you can, I mean, if you imagine it as a space, how you can navigate there? You will, I mean, I understand that the spatial form of Zoom is basically a dot. So it's like a super compressed environment where everything just becoming a simple dot. So I mean, it's not even a linear object, right? It's not a line, so you cannot move left or right on it. You can just sit there and observe everything that's happening. You're like becoming a universe in itself, like compressed in a single symbol. And right now what we're seeing, and why the metaverse started to appear in all this news, in different articles, and even in recent like startup channels, etc., is that what is now happening, I call it like a search for a new space, a search for a new spatial, like the digital program in art and science that I create is called. And because we are kind of starting to search for a new world inside of the internet. Because I mean, we need to be able to move there. We need to be able to communicate there. And this is why things like Roblox becoming so popular. And this is what I call the metaverse of now. Because I mean, this is how our kids, who is now like a 10, 12 years old, experiencing what in the future will be like the next virtual world. But the problem with this metaverse is that it's kind of, I think, is completely detached from a physical environment. It's completely virtual, right? I mean, it's completely three-dimensional. It's completely like it has this cartoonish look. But the problem is not the look. I mean, the problem is that it's completely far away from our physical world. I mean, it's not tangible. It's not. You cannot navigate it through the physical world. And if you look into the Wikipedia, we will see that in Wikipedia, first, the metaverse is a collective virtual experience, but it's also a convergence between virtual enhanced physical reality and physically persistent virtual space. So I mean, it's a lot of physicality there, a lot of like physical. I mean, a lot of us world physical here. 1, 2, at least. And right now what we have in the internet is completely virtual. Moreover, the Zoom is not even a space at all, right? It's just a compression of our thoughts, of our communication, just a single object. And if you start to think how the metaverse of tomorrow might look like, it's usually a lot of like my students and people who start to learn about a new media and virtual reality refer to Kiichi Matsuda. He's a beautiful London-based designer and speculative artist. And here is a video of himself called a hyperreality. And the hyperreality illustrates a world where a virtual reality kind of completely attached to a physical environment, and you are seeing this world from the eyes of a person who navigates it. And this person is a buyer. She buys for basically a groceries in a shop. And the interesting thing, before this video came out, the service-based grocery shops like Samokat, Yandex.Lavka, or the UK or US-based counterparts never existed. So I mean, they started to appear, but they was not so popular. So Kiichi Matsuda kind of envisioned this algorithmically driven world where the person can shop for someone who is just basically sending her the list of groceries. That's kind of obvious having business idea, but in his world, the world of this person is kind of directly connected to the virtual. And I mean, when you see these examples, you never see the physicality of things, right? I mean, you hardly can recognize the bus and the street, but still it's like a hyper-advertised website which you go on and you see a lot of like links like a buy, sell, like a Pirate Bay in its worst days, Pirate Bay. And I mean, but I really don't believe in this because I mean, in this case, the physical world is kind of super diminished. I mean, it's starting to become just a shell for the virtual, right? But I think what we need to search right now is a kind of convergence between virtual and physical, when they kind of intersect and intertwine with each other, and you cannot like separate them from each other. And here you clearly can separate them, right? So you can separate the virtuality and the physicality. So I really don't believe this thing. And the worst part of it, I mean, this is basically his message, is that when this person become hacked, I'm not sure. Can I? No, I cannot move the video here, unfortunately. Maybe here. Oh, that's super useful. Yeah, so when this person become hacked, you're starting to see how the physical world takes over. And when finally the virtual reality shuts down, you see kind of, not dystopian, but I mean today's vision of a physical world. And I think this is kind of, this message is, for myself is a little bit strange, because first you are seeing that the physical world is dark, but the second, what you are seeing is that it's kind of flat and orthogonal, which is, I mean, it's not the case. And this is the problem of this vision when you kind of separate the digital and the physical, when you layer them, right? But because instead of layering them, we need to kind of intertwine them and and make them inseparable. So I mean, there is a trend right now. It's kind of started after the pandemic, and this is trend what I called the abolition of physical. I mean, we're starting to abolish the physical shops. We're starting to abolish the classical ways to communicate, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of starting to digitize everything, and this is a kind of trend that was increased by the pandemics, and now it's maybe a little bit correcting itself, but still it's going on the full steam. And we again starting to return to the concept of like a smart city, different techniques for tracking people's activity in the city, because we want to be efficient, we want to be resilient, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, I mean, our world where we're living right now, it's already kind of completely digital. It's filled with the digital environment. It's kind of intertwined with it. And this is a really old video from an artist called Tim Arnall. I always show this video to my students wherever they are kind of urbanists who want to be in a digital urbanism market, or they are artists who want to kind of mix everything with everything. So in this video, you are seeing how different computer vision systems basically track our urban environment. And this is a video from 2003. So and this mix of old, or maybe I'm wrong, it's not from 2003. Maybe it's because I think, yeah, I'm wrong, it's from 2011. And the thing with this video is that first, I think as an art project, it's quite interesting, because it's just a mix of a different computer vision algorithms shot it completely as a raw footage without any post-processing, etc. And you're just hearing a sound, which is kind of was added by the author. So it's similar like a digiset, so a completely post-production way of producing an artwork. But the most interesting thing is that artists talking with us through the art about technology. So without any kind of technical terms, without any kind of different buzzwords, etc., he shows us how the modern digital city works, and how the city works from a really long time, for already 10 years. And we are seeing, in this case, what we are seeing is that the city is already kind of digital. And that's astonishing. I mean, it's already filled with different algorithms which calculate how much cars passing, how much pedestrians are there, etc., etc., etc. They're not widespread, but they are there. And I mean, if you try to kind of shut down one of these algorithms, soon you will see how we cannot already live without a digital environment. Because I mean, when the trains stop working, when your elevator stops moving people up and down, we are stuck. And that's the problem. So our cities are already kind of digital, and they're already filled with a digital technology. And in this case, the only question I usually want to ask my students is that, what is the virtual in this case? I mean, what is the virtual environment? I mean, is it kind of an immersed immersive world where we need to be to feel this virtuality, or just a picture, or just like a construct of mind where we are kind of losing ourselves, right? We are starting to believe that this hands is not our hands, this body is not our body, and this space is not our space, but it's a kind of fake, it's a trick. Because when we are like wearing the virtual reality goggles, glasses, we are still in the physical world. And this is another video by Tim Arnold, that I also always showing. It's called a light fields or something like this. It's about the Wi-Fi signal and how after kind of captures the Wi-Fi signal looking at the power of Wi-Fi signal. But instead of using the Wi-Fi signal just as a number, he captures the Wi-Fi through the long exposure photography. So using the long exposure photography, basically a freeze light, how it's called in masses, he tries to show how the Wi-Fi signal basically changes through the urban landscape. And what this video showing us is that, I mean, if we kind of freeze the moment, if we freeze the time, we are able to see this alternative landscape which is existing in our city. And this landscape is kind of virtual, because this landscape is, first it's unseen by our eyes, right? Because we need tools to be able to see it. But also, this landscape, I mean, it's always affecting us at the same time. So it's unseen, it's immaterial, how's the name of this project, which I finally now remember. But it's completely affecting us, affecting our, affecting ourselves, affecting how we consume information, affecting, our rights to consume the information. And this is what, again, raises the question. So if this landscape of information already here, in between of us, and if this landscape is already presented here, I mean, it's now doing things. So it passes information between us. It's allowing us to send the messages, etc., etc., etc. I mean, is this landscape a virtual? Is this landscape a digital, a fictional construct? Or is this landscape is what forms our modern reality? Is this landscape is what kind of forms our current city? I mean, because you try to be in the modern city without an internet connection, what you will feel in the city? You will feel. I mean, you will not be able to even call a cab right now, right? Without an internet connection. So I think this two things already intertwined again, and it kind of goes moreover further and further, because this is like my favorite quote from Baudrillard, called that the territory no longer precedes the map nor survives it. So basically, if you kind of observe the more modern urban environment, we will see that it's kind of even cannot be mapped, because we need to map it in a multitude of projections. We need to map it in a digital projection, which basically like a Wi-Fi signals or data streams which are passing through the city. We need to map it as our observation of a city, which is kind of also interesting. So how we observe the city, a mental map of us. We also need to map it in a classical geographical projection. So it's like a multitude of streams, a multitude of maps, right? And the worst thing of it is that, I mean, the image of a territory, it's a kind of always an abstraction, the intersection between all this map, which also can be correct in only a single given moment, because information, I mean, it circulates, so the maps are always changing. There is no like a static map of a territory anymore. And it's also become much more complex, because if you look into Claude Shannon, the pioneer of cybernetics experiment, it's a famous experiment called a mouse maze, where he programmed a mouse. I mean, in YouTube, you can find a myriad of such examples, like Google first AI in the world, and you will find pictures like this. Black and white, people are running some robotic stuff in 80s, 90s, etc. Even in more early days. So the problem with this experiment is that it was widely criticized in the days when Shannon done it, because people started to understand that the mice, this object on the screen, it doesn't smart at all. The problem from that day of computing was that you really cannot fit the computer inside of this mice. I mean, the computer took rooms, right? How you can put the computer inside of such small thing? So the secret of this project was that computer was the environment, basically. So the computer was hidden inside of the maze. And because of this, the experiment, like a first AI in the world, was kind of criticized because this robotic thing, it was dumb. The maze done all the decision for these robotic things, right? So the maze decided when this thing need to turn. The maze decided when this thing need to stop, etc., etc., etc. But I think that instead of criticizing this work, instead of saying that AI needs to be put inside of the mouse, we're basically seeing the future. We're observing the future here. Because if you look how the Uber driver behaves, how he chooses when to turn and when to stop, is he something like this mice, driven completely by an algorithm, which is, I mean, deployed inside of the immaterial cloud, right, which we cannot see in the city. So if you look into how even the modern services, urban services work, like delivery, taxi, etc., 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 we will see that the cybernetics is already there. I mean, old school cybernetics, where we're seeing the kind of feedback loop of control between machine and biological things, where people just doing a kind of actions, and machine, like a navigator, right, deciding where they need, which actions they need to take, and making them, I don't know, giving them a profit when they're doing the right actions, and basically making the penalties when they're, I don't know, a little bit lost in the city, so Uber just reducing the minimum wage, etc., etc., etc. So, I mean, we are not so far in our urban environment from this mouse. And moreover, I think that environment that we are right now navigating, right, it's become smart in this case. So it's become inseparable from these digital services which allow us to navigate this environment. And from the art perspective, what we are seeing right now, we are seeing a kind of, how I say about it, it's like a new type of art emerging, which focuses completely on converting our physical reality into the digital one. So this is a project by Ephemeral One, done by my wife, Vadim Smakhtin, called Moscow Study Dissolution. This is a project that was done for SEAL X2 Gallery. It's a completely online gallery run by Boris Shershenkov. He's also teaching here in More Art and Science. And the Moscow Study Dissolution, it's basically a 3D scan of part of Electric Theater Stanislavski from Moscow. It's like a theater. And basically what we are doing, we are recreating the sound art installation that was installed in Electric Theater like several years ago already, but we're basically putting it into virtual reality. What is interesting here, I mean the concept looks simple, but what is interesting here is that how basically the technology of scanning works. I mean, for myself, interesting. Because you're seeing a lot of artifacts here, a lot of like glitches. But the problem is that when we can kind of convert the physical reality in a digital form, we are always losing the resolution of it, right? It's really impossible to convert a physical reality into a virtual form without losing a part of it. So, and usually people are fighting this resolution problem. So usually people starting to kind of increase it like time over time, they increases the complexity of the model, etc. And in this case, when you increase the complexity of the model, we are losing the variety of devices that can open it, right? And so we are basically kind of putting our model, I think, in the kind of digital gulag of a high-powered PC or something like this, which can only play this model. But is this right? I mean, is this correct way to work with the digital reality? And the thing is, I think that the aesthetics that we are seeing here is basically something that already happened in the media art when we seen the glitch aesthetics or a data motion aesthetics, which first was populated by artists and then kind of taken by media like Linkin Park did a data mosh movie clip in like I don't know 2008 or something. So and here, so basically using the chip LiDAR scanners installed on the iPhones, iPads, etc. What we are doing, we basically embrace the aesthetics of a digital scan. And I think that what the current practice shows, that the chatworks will pop up more and more as soon as the leader scanners will be installed on more and more devices. And this is a good thing. It's a bad thing for an artist who wants to just be like unique when he is working with 3D scans. But good for a digital environment, because we will see more and more objects appearing as in their digital form. And that's kind of interesting, I think. And also what I think is interesting here in terms of art, how the artist, how Daria is working with an objects here. So we are seeing this object, which is kind of a real object, but which was 3D scanned. But this one object is completely synthetical. It was created by an artist, but they're kind of inseparable here, right? And also when you look into these pictures, you're starting to see people freezed in a moment, different elements of interior which were dynamic, but they're static. So this kind of freezing a time and also freezing a different biological species inside of this time freeze. Another project that we did for a seal gallery was the seal gallery main space. And the interesting thing of it is that it kind of combines the metaverse aesthetics like this one. So it's a kind of gamish view. It has a gamish view, but also it has a kind of a high architecture inside of it. And when you look at it in like a cut, you will see that it's kind of all intertwined. The aesthetic of a gaming, like the aesthetic of current days metaverse, and the aesthetic of architecture as we observe it. And the last project that I wanted to show, it's called an encave. And encave, one sec. Oh, I see the controls. Now I don't. And the encave is basically what we call a datascape. So the datascape is a vision where we are able to create a space, a completely virtual space, but we create it from the real world data. So the idea is that you can observe the data as you're observing the landscape. So, and the encave was created by COVID-19 data. So we collected an open data from a GitHub about COVID-19 cases. And our idea is that we can create a kind of a space for meditation with this data. So we can create a space that will allow people to meditate over this crisis and see how the space is growing. So the idea is that space can grow all the time when we are getting a new information. And when the pandemic will be over, the space kind of can freeze in space-time. But the problem is that the pandemic will never be over, and so the space will never stop growing. But we kind of stopped developing this project, but I hope we will commission it at some point somewhere, so and finish it already. Yeah, and so why it is important, all this stuff? I mean, why it's important to talk about this interconnection between physicality and virtuality? Because I think when we talk about the metaverses, when we talk about the virtual, we always miss the core part. We miss our natural habitat, right? The beauty of it is that these forests, these biomes, not a real artificial intelligence. They're just a kind of a set of rules which allows them to be able to exist like an object of value, object of capital, object of like self-ownership. And that's kind of a whole new idea, a whole new big idea when the landscape, when the environment can start to be able to be presented inside of our agenda. Because right now, when we look into ecology, how it's evolving, we are seeing that we are kind of trying to first, so basically it's two things. First, it's a green ecology, when we are trying to protect ecology, right? On another side, it's a dark ecology, when we are saying that we are not separated from ecology, so we cannot like save it, so we'll die with it together, or we'll live with it together. So that's like how I observe the dark ecology. But Terra Zero kind of says that no, we are separated from environment, we are separated from ecology, but we are inseparated in terms of like communicating with it. So basically, it redefines the ecosystem. Because the ecosystem, right, in its classical definition, it's a kind of interaction of different agents inside of the ecosystem. But what Terra Zero is saying that the new ecosystem is the ecosystem where we are interacting with environment, but not only as a biological species, but also as a technological species as well. So environment can be represented inside of the technological world. And in Terra Zero, they have this quote that we need to reconsider them as members of technosphere. But I think it's really a little bit maybe not the true case. So, and I have some more slides, but I'm not sure it's relevant. I think this one is completely relevant, that it's not kind of a new technosphere. It's a new biosphere that we are observing right now. So the new biosphere of today is a biosphere where different type of agents, like technological agents, biological agents, must be interconnected with each other. And what I'm introducing here as a conception, I'm introducing the conception of bridge. And this is what basically we'll be building on this workshop as well. So the concept of bridge is quite simple. The bridge allows technological agent to communicate with biological one. It's a bridge. Bridge can be super simple. I mean, bridge can be electric signal. Bridge can be a physical structure, etc., etc., etc. But as soon as bridge is can be controlled by an algorithm, that's a bridge. That's a bridge in between technological and biological. And I'm running also this project as an engineer, which is called Nature Cognita. And the idea of this project, I mean, it's I think a nice example of a bridge, is that the plants can create an electricity. So this is a real project that we're exhibiting right now in Electromuseum in Moscow. And in this project, we are using a plant microbiocell, which produce a small amount of electricity because the plant itself, it's kind of connected, so it's system. So this is how it produces. So on the low part in roots, it has different like carbon fibers, which allow us to extract the electricity from a root. So basically, the idea of this like a smart plant is that we are able to provide to create a small amount of electricity, of course low power one, directly from a plant roots. So this project was called a Green Spark before I joined it. But when I joined it, I introduced the concept of bridge again. And the concept of bridge is quite simple. So what we are doing, we are using plant as an environmental sensor. So we allow a plant to sense environment through the simple sensors like humidity, temperature, etc., etc., etc. And we also allow plant to sense itself. So plant can sense how humid the ground where he planted. Plant can sense his electricity level, etc., etc., etc. So the idea is that plants are becoming what we call a cognition unit. So it's starting to sense environment, it started to sense itself, and it's starting to become presented in a virtual world, and it started to become a part of an algorithm. And how it happens? Basically, we are introducing an ecosystematic interaction between plants and the user of our digital ecosystem, where user through the smartphone application can connect directly to the plants and download data that collected by the plant. And while we are transferring the information from a plant to a person, we are basically creating this a value chain where plant giving a part of its value to the person, and for it, person getting a benefits from a system in general. So he gets a kind of credits, or he getting part of cryptocurrency, etc. So people are used here as a data transfer mechanism, which allow us to upload data from a plant directly to the internet or to the different networks. And this is important because such plants can be installed in the really remote locations. And the tech that we are running, it's really low powered, so we are not able to run a constant internet connection for the plant. So people are used here not as a users of it, but instead of a part of the ecosystem which sustains the plant, sustains our digital network of such plants, and sustain our digital solution in general. And such projects like Nature Cognita right now are run by a fund which is called a Sovereign Nature Initiative. So Sovereign Nature Initiative is a fund which is focusing on making the nature to be kind of self-owned, for redefining the value of nature. A really interesting fund. They're running different hackathons, supporting different art projects like Nature Cognita, and I think this is and this fund was also created by from the inspiration of a Terra Zero project in general. So I think it's kind of a great idea when we're introducing the cryptocurrency to the natural world, and when we are starting to think how the natural world can behave like an agent, but instead of like imagine it like it's a robot or something, we imagine it as a simple algorithm, which just a part of a value chain. And I wanted to finish by this slide. It's a project by ScanLab. It's like a group of professional leader scanners, but they also, I think, an artists. And in this example, we are seeing a piece of nature scanned by a leader with a high resolution. But what we need to see here is that this nature is really not, the resolution is again not like the resolution from our retinas, right? So we always miss it. But the thing is that why I think that this like a 3D scan is a vision of a metaverse is that we are kind of transferring our natural environment to the virtual one. Don't really focusing on the resolution problem, but we also kind of observing it as an environment. And I have this video somewhere here, yes, also by ScanLab, where instead of nature, we're seeing people scanned by a lidar, yeah? And I usually say in my students is that, when we are starting to think that it's really maybe hard to put in our minds that, I don't know, nature, algorithms, and people can be coexisting together inside of a digital environment, right? You can look at these pictures. And what is the difference between representing the nature as a set of dots and representing the people as a set of dots? Inside of the metaverse, inside of virtual reality, we're all just dots. We're all just dots scanned by some kind of scanner, so we're no different from each other. Yeah, so this is the end of my introduction lecture. I'm now open for questions. Yeah, I know that I might speak fast, but I'm not at my full speed right now. Yeah, so any questions? But I will, through the practice sessions, I will be slower a little bit. Not completely, but a little bit. Okay.
One question, and what's the aim for these projects and common the virtual space and reality? What is the aim?
But by the aim we can think about the monetary aim, what kind of profit we can extract from it, or the philosophical aim. So what kind of aim do you think about?
Also philosophical and.
I understood. From a philosophical point of vision, I don't see the aim, any kind of aim, because the aim usually is like when you're going for the goal and you see a target in front of you and you're following this target. But the thing when we are starting to talk about convergence of digital and physical realities is that it's not what we want to happen, it's already what's happened. So there is no aim. It's just the aim for myself is just to make sense of it. So what I'm doing, I'm making sense of it. I'm not kind of moving anything to somewhere. I'm just trying to understand how it's happened and what might happen next. So I'm not trying to kind of move everything towards that space. And it's the beauty of this digital, virtual, physical, digital, all this convergence is that it happens not because we want it, but because we basically need it. And we need it not by ourselves even, we need it maybe as a species. Because we kind of starting to introduce a new technology which constantly changing us, right? And this is basically the way how we evolve. And we are not kind of making it our target or something like this like what we want to see. Basically, this is our like a natural evolutional process, and I think this is kind of a little bit maybe hard to start thinking about it, but it goes much simpler if you kind of simplify the discussion. For example, recently I like watched a video on YouTube where Elon Musk talked on some forum, and where he told about like a social media. I mean, I really don't like such public talks. I mean, it's too generic. But there, it was an interesting idea that the social media, I mean, the things that we're experiencing through the social media, like we are always feeling a little bit endangered as a species. And the problem with the informational systems that we created is that we're basically starting to live in a multiple of realities, right? So we're basically starting to hear the news from a multiple of places, even from a completely digital places. And this is also what kind of creates a different feedback mechanics inside of us. We maybe do not even understand this mechanics. So all this thing with like a media overload that we're having right now, it's basically a part of our evolution as a species, because we are just maybe not prepared as a biological object to be able to hear so many information from so many places. So it's not a problem that the medias are becoming darker. It's a problem that we are just hearing them better. It's like when, I don't know, in a superhuman movie, when the Spider-Man getting his new spider sense, he's starting to see and hear everything. And first he kind of crazed, right? Because, I mean, it's impossible for us to hear and see everything. But this is what internet done for us. I mean, it's allowed us to see and hear everything. And this is what, I mean, as researchers, we need to make sense of. Like, why are doing so and how we are doing so. And with physical biological convergence, it's the same thing. So we are basically starting to become digital. We're starting to become inseparated from our smartphones, from our laptops, etc., etc. So I mean, we just need to learn why it happens and how we can change it to be more comfortable with it, because we cannot like remove it from us. And this is what will happen with a natural environment as well. I mean, this is what already happens with the satellite imagery. Satellite imagery already kind of detects how we build. And do we build right or not? I mean, there is a laws that are kind of executed over the satellite imagery, which looks which looks for different illegal structures in I don't know, forest territories. And this is already how we are seeing how the physical landscape and the digital landscape converged with each other. And I mean, the question when the algorithms will appear, which will make decisions on top of these conversions, it's just a question of time. It's like a year, 2, 3, 5, not so far. But these algorithms will be not AIs. That's the problem. I mean, we need to redefine our vision of AI, because AI is not like a general intellect that we always want to get. There is no such thing as a synthetic general intellect. Instead, it's like a purpose-built intellect, which already is there. And the complexity that creates the artificial intelligence is when we overlap a lot of the artificial intelligence, simple ones, a lot of algorithms and subroutines, and creates a complexity, which for us observed as a thinking object, but instead it's a number of simple rules. So, and it already happens. I mean, if you look how the stock market works, where different algorithmic traders, algorithmic bots are trading stocks, you will see that it's not anymore an algorithm, it's artificial intelligence, because all these trading bots are trading stocks not alone, as a trading as an ecosystem, because every bot looks to other bots, how they are trading stocks. And this creates sometimes complexity that we cannot understand. Why they traded like this? Why they sold everything? Because the market was okay. And this is what people are researching right now. I mean, they're starting to develop a new type of techniques that allow us to observe the biological systems, the digital systems as biological systems. I can send you the article from a Nature journal about it. It's like using biological methods for species analysis for researching artificial intelligence and robotics. It's a science paper that came out like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.